So the book is a horror comedy which features three Lolitas who move into a haunted house, and between snipers and auctions and ghosts, they're just trying to have a good time. So I'm just going to read a quick chapter from it.
Good morning!
Good morning! Welcome back to another tentacle quill.
Spooky tentacle.
Halloween edition.
Halloween edition. The scary thing is, NaNoWriMo is about 3 days from when this comes out.
Yep.
Yeah. So, we wanted to talk about a spooky book. But one of the things we realized is I barely read any horror. But I realized there is a horror book I read. And it's the Lockhart Mansion book by yours truly. Ducky wrote this.
I wrote this. It is a horror comedy about three girls in a haunted house discovering all the secrets. I had a lot of fun writing this because I found a lot of friends in the Lolita and EGL community.
Yeah, this is a Lolita comedic horror book.
Yes.
What was that like one-line pitch that agent said was like the best pitch? The three girls move into a haunted house. Will they survive?
Auction snipers and ghostly occurrences.
But yeah, so it's a fun Lolita book. And because we did this as a Kickstarter, we've got this lovely hardback, which was a Kickstarter exclusive. We've got lovely art of the three main characters, the girls.
Ramona, Valiant, and George.
Ramona, Valiant, and George. Because that was also an interesting challenge, because they have very different voices, and the book was split into three.
So there was specific line editing, especially for Ramona, because she's American. So for Ramona, we had to execute a bunch of U's and add a bunch of Z's instead of S's, and trucks instead of lorries. So, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, it was a challenge to edit.
It very much was, yeah.
But in the mood of spooky season, the reason I find it so fascinating to talk about is part of spooky season is like this cheesiness.
Yes, there's also a lot of cheesiness in the book because, of course, it has to be comedic. It has to kind of make fun of the tropes.
Well, the thing is like there's definitely like this line, right? There's like the plastic Halloween cheesy comedy, right?
Yeah.
It's something that I would enjoy, something that has more broad appeal. And then there's the true horror genre. And it's actually been kind of an interesting thing is we've had multiple people at events and stuff come up to us and
they don't like horror, but they still enjoyed this.
Yeah, and so that's been an interesting sort of sales pitch to walk.
Yeah, because you don't want to say it's a comedy because it's got horror elements, but you also don't want to say it's purely horror because it's got a lot of comedic elements. And that's kind of been the fun because as Claire has already mentioned, I really, really love horror. So I know the tropes.
And you kind of want to feel this best. Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, it was a lot of fun to write.
But, I mean, so the other thing is, after this is aired, you would have been in Scotland doing a reading for it.
Yes, I will
up in
be.
Edinburgh.
I will be at a Lolita event giving a reading from Lockhart Mansion. I've made it.
Yeah, no, I mean, this was definitely the nicest book to publish because we had the Kickstarter, we had the launch party and stuff. But yeah, the treading that line of comedic horror is interesting because this was the first book that from the outset, and I think there was a big lesson for us because it took us a long time to learn this lesson. We thought about how we were going to sell it before you wrote it.
Yes, and we knew the audience for this book before we even put it out there, and that is a big lesson.
It was that thing we were talking about the other day about marketing books, and that one YouTube video. I feel like genres do us a bit of disservice, and I think the modern concept of tags and like subject matter, because really what we're trying to do, and I think this is why Lockhart Mansion with the comedic horror Lolita thing worked so well. Genre is just a way to find an audience.
It really is. Genre is basically a set of expectations that the reader has of your book. And
it's
if
like
you can,
it does what it says on the tin.
Basically. I mean, that's also kind of why we went for the cover design that we did. It's got like horror elements, the house, the cat,
so,
and then it's got like a little stain here, a scribble here, a silly Frankenstein
well, because
sticker.
they're all university students,
Yes.
and when I sat down to design the cover, I was like, I wanted to feel like the kind of book I would have had in uni or whatever.
Yes.
Where it's that college rule line paper.
Yes.
It's got the stickers and stuff on. It's got the
black-
coffee stain.
Yep.
And then this is meant to be like duct tape. Because you know how like your college thing would always fall apart, and you'd often
okay. Yes.
have to reinforce it. And so that was the vibe with the cover.
Yeah.
Which was also different because this was the first cover. We didn't specifically hire an artist to do key art for the cover for this. We did actually hire a bunch of artists, so through the Kickstarter to do sticker art, to do promotional art.
And we definitely made sure to use artists who were in this fashion genre.
Yeah, no, all the artists we used were familiar with the subculture, which was important because like dress patterns and stuff like that. You would have seen like a bunch of the art that we've dipped in this video. Ironically, I think that's the other reason comedic fashion has or comedic twists on things like horror have become more popular.
Yes.
Is if you've ever worked through a creative pipeline where you care about ratings agencies, right?
Yes.
Ratings aren't about, is this age appropriate for a kid, right?
Yes, that's
and
the
so I think a lot of horror movies basically aim for a lower age rating. I mean, now the modern trend is to aim for a high age rating, but that's a whole different conversation.
But that also led to things like, oh, these monsters bleed blue, because if they bleed red, we can't have them bleed on screen that much.
And like, you know, ironically, showing someone shooting someone is a lower age rating than showing someone elbowing someone in the face, because it's reproducible violence.
Yes, indeed.
So there's all these kind of weird tropes. So this is the thing with comedic horror and like spooky season is I love bad horror. I love comedic horror.
Good.
But basically, I've got enough scary things in real life that I don't want to read. So, like, it's not a book, but my go-to reference for what is the difference between, like, what is true horror for me is the X-Files Green Bucket. Yeah. So, this is it. I generally avoid true horror. But yeah, so, like, we went comedic.
Yeah, it definitely has a comedy edge to it. I mean, especially because it's a female cast. You don't want to do the tropes of slasher fix and stuff like that. So giving the girls more agency over what's going on.
Avoiding all of the horror tropes that are just enforcing shitty views.
Because in a very traditional horror movie, these girls, because they care about fashion, they're uni students, they would probably be just slasher bait, and in this one I really wanted to give them more than that.
Though to give horror credit, while it's had some of the most regressive tropes, it's also had some of the most progressive tropes.
It has.
I think horror and suspense has given female actors better roles, especially in the early days, than a lot of other Hollywood stuff did. And I mean, as I say, even though I personally think it's more of a sci-fi book, Mary Shelley, Frankenstein, and there's been a lot of really good female horror writers. And you look at things like crime fiction is dominated, well, not dominated, but there's a large amount of female writers there.
What I think science fiction and horror also have in common is that both of these address a common fear. Like Frankenstein was addressing the fear of electricity and the newly invented technology of resuscitation for a drowned victim. So,
which was terrifying for people because it was basically resurrecting the dead.
Basically, yeah. So it harps on that little fear. Like in sci-fi, we have things like the grey goo, aliens.
Grey goo is my ultimate
fear. Grey goo is a scary one.
It's that... I think this is the thing that, for me, separates comedic horror from horror, is that, like, when I've finished reading comedic horror, the monster's been defeated, the curse has been lifted. The monster was always something that you could see and touch and run away from, or had very defined rules.
Yes.
Whereas horror, it's unknowable.
This is true. It's
uncertain. I think one of the other things I find interesting about reading horror or reading horrific things is you can only paint with the colors of your experience.
Yes.
So as a reader, if the author is describing a dead body, for example, most people have never seen a mutilated corpse. No. And so they don't get the sensory feedback. What I'm saying is the difference between books and movies is movies can provide you new imagery. Like books, obviously we read them or we listen to them or whatever, but they're completely abstract. In the sense of not going too much into the theory of like brain and consciousness and philosophy, but you cannot get a new sensation from a book. True. It can describe an amalgamation of previous sensations, whereas like if I show you a lot of movies and stuff, you could experience a lot of imagery through that, and that can give you a lot of sense memory. Lockhart was definitely a lot of lessons for us.
Yes. And we also had a really good vision where we were going with the Kickstarter.
Before we even said Kickstarter, you always like, whenever we talked about like the Lolita book, you were like,
I want a tea party as the launch.
And that's like when you do the math on that for marketing and stuff, it's basically impossible to make a tea party work for a self-published indie author. Yeah. But then when we made it part of the Kickstarter, it made sense. It made perfect sense. We had a lovely, we'll throw up some pictures from it here.
Yes, we had a lovely time. It was the highest tier in our campaign. The people who supported us at that level got a lot of goodies. There was this amazing tote bag that we made.
We had a little folded box with stickers in, some sweets.
Yeah, and some jewelry from another Lolita creator that we know. They got extra art, stickers, and they got a hardback copy of the book and an exclusive reading by yours truly.
Basically, if you were a fan and you backed that Kickstarter at the highest tier, you definitely got your money's worth. And for us, it made sense. It was a cost-neutral thing for us, in the sense of the highest tier.
It was also just the whole thing of like marketing, people making videos, people writing about it.
They were our passionate fans.
Yes, exactly. And they were the people who really enjoyed it. And sometimes that's also just really important. Like,
oh no, it's everything, right? Because there's a phrase in video games, I want to make enough money to make the next game.
And now that we had that successful Kickstarter, we know who to market to, we know how to do it, because we got a lot of advice on people doing Kickstarters, and one of the best ones was the only make it a 30-day campaign rather than a 60-day one, because we were exhausted after those 30 days.
Shattered.
Yeah.
And the thing is like, I've seen people even go for 15 days. Yeah. The thing is that like, if you're a big company or you expect, if you're raising $1 million, say on Kickstarter, 60 days is useful because you build up that whole media train and you go through that. Most independent creators, sticking to 30 days or just around 30 days is a good number, because it's relatively short, but it's long enough that it's a paycheck for everyone.
Pretty much, yes.
Pretty much like 90% of people get a paycheck every 30 days or so. The Kickstarter went above the goal. Yes. For us, it saved a lot of cash flow problems. So much. Because like for the paperback prints, normally when we do a print, we just have to suck up the cost until we've sold the first batch and stuff. Whereas with the Kickstarter, we didn't have to suck them in cost. No, it was the most profitable book for sure.
And because we had that like momentum going before the launch, before everyone got their books, it also helped. Like people were writing blogs, people were making silly TikToks.
We commercialized spooky season.
I mean, the other thing was already very commercialized.
No, I know.
The EGL.
I know. I'm laughing about it. But yeah, so I mean that's our little thing. You're gonna go up to Scotland soon. As I say, by the time this is out, you would have been.
Yes.
And NaNoWriMo will be kicking off. Your first book was a NaNoWriMo book.
It was.
Yeah. So, yeah, you know, busy times. So I hope you all dive in and have fun with it.
Watch a nice scary movie or have a nice malt cider. Just enjoy the season.
And if you want some comedic horror for the spooky season, Lockhart Mansion.
We definitely recommend it.
We would, wouldn't we? It's almost like there's some sort of self-interest in that. No, it's a good fun read.
Oh, well.
With that being said, Lou, should we get some fried chicken?
Sounds amazing. Where's the inflatable dino costume?
I think Tay still got it.